Hello, everybody. Charlie and Linda Bloom are here to talk with you today about complaints that are very highly underrated. And complaints, we tend to not want to feel that we're a whiner and a complainer, so we sometimes hold back from telling the truth about how we feel. And we don't want people whining and complaining to us. So we sometimes silence ourselves with things that are very important to come out in the open. And I want you to consider the possibility of the alternative, about what happens when you conceal them. Because we tend to accumulate dissatisfaction, resentment, feelings of disappointment, and that's not good for a relationship. And if your partner doesn't feel free to bring their complaints to you, you're asking for trouble, because they will be feeling often disappointed, frustrated, upset, like their needs and their desires are not being addressed. And it can sag the relationship well-being way down. So I think that one of the main important reasons why people don't really hold complaints in the level of esteem that they should is because they blur complaints with criticism. And there really is a big difference. We don't want to be critical and judgmental, and that's a mighty commitment to make, to stay out of that way of communicating with each other. But if you throw the complaints out with the criticism, you're doing a disservice, because we're not really bringing some of the things that need to be addressed to our partner's attention. I'll give you an example. If you say, I'm uncomfortable with this isn't working for me, do you see that the emphasis is on self? And that's so much more effective than saying, you always break your agreements with me. As soon as the you and always are out of our mouth, we're already in trouble. So to stay with our own experience and to talk about the complaint without going over that very thin line to criticism makes all the difference. Yeah.
Right.
Are you going to tell your experience about how important this is?
I'm trying to give an example of a complaint that I have for you.
Oh, yeah.
And
you can't think of any because I'm so marvelous.
I couldn't think of one. So, I mean, the only one I come up with is my complaint that you don't give me enough to complain about. Because I like complaining.
Oh, no, you don't. You're not a complainer.
Well, I don't like to feel complaints, but, when I do, I like to kind of get it off my chest, and it feels good sometimes to self-righteously proclaim that this is unfair, you dropped the ball, you owe me this, I'm superior to you.
That's criticism.
I mean, all of that stuff, but all of that stuff is embedded in complaints that are made irresponsibly.
Of course.
So when you don't make a responsible complaint, in other words, rather than saying I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated, I'm hurt, I'm angry, I'm scared, I'm lonely, I'm whatever, we use the Y word, you, because it's a reflection of the way we hold it. I mean, if I feel and believe that you are responsible for making me feel this way, you're making me feel lonely by not being around as much as I'd like you to be. You're making me feel insecure by expressing your anger, which makes me scared that now if you get angry enough, you might leave. So there's something about righteously claiming and proclaiming that grievance. And so one of the things that I think we all have to acknowledge is that there's a part of us that wants to be right about being entitled or being deserving of getting what we're not getting right now from this person.
So,
and it's their fault.
Yeah, so this is a really important point about the way in which we bring the complaint to the other person in a highly responsible way, not making them responsible.
In other words, in a way that doesn't start with the word you.
Yeah, and I think people are reluctant to bring up their complaints, whatever isn't working for them in their desire system and in their needs, because they don't want to hurt the other person.
Well, there's a bigger reason for that.
They don't want to invite retaliation. And there's tremendous amount of resistance to doing it.
Well, not only that, but when you do it,
they don't trust themselves to do it well.
When you do it, you're giving them an invitation to do it back to you. And some people have what we refer to as negative contracts, where, you know, you don't give me any bad news. Don't give me anything that's going to upset me, hurt me, scare me, disappoint me. Don't say those things to me because I don't want to hear it. And if you do, then it's going to give me a huge invitation to say, well, you know, what about this? And you always do this and this. And, you know, we can get into one of those things where we get into a competition to win the victim of the day game.
I sometimes call this the conspiracy of silence, but the unconscious deal that's made to keep things hidden and under wraps.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous game to play, to keep a lot of things hidden.
Well, it's because it requires you to do a lot of lying. It requires a lot of dishonesty.
The cover up.
Oh, I'm fine. Yeah, everything's fine. I'm not upset.
People suck it up and suck it up and suck it up, and then they blow. Or sometimes they leave the relationship, or sometimes it turns into an ugly, nasty fight.
They accumulate resentments, and when the resentment bag gets so full that it is overflowing, then you are in big trouble.
So what I'm trying to do here is to normalize that we all have needs and we all have desires, and we can't expect our partner to read our mind and always know what those are. And we will be alerted that some important desires of ours or some important needs of ours are not being adequately attended to when we feel upset. And if we squash it down and don't find a way diplomatically, respectfully, to bring it to our partner's attention, they can't address it. Not that they're responsible for fixing us, not that they're responsible for meeting all of our needs or desires, but at least they have the opportunity to know what's not working for us and what would work better.
Yeah. So the way we present it has everything to do with the way in which they're going to receive it. And the way they receive it is going to have everything to do with the way they respond to it. And if we present our grievance or complaint in a way that explicitly or even implicitly implies that it's their fault, or that there's something that they're doing wrong, or there's something that they're not doing that they should be doing, then they're going to get defensive. And the reason why, you know, we don't want to walk around on eggshells all the time, being scared that we're going to cause the other person to be defensive. But at the same time, we don't want to allow that fear that we may have of them, of us saying something that they may not want to hear, compel us to withhold important information. And important information includes specifically anything that is not working for me at this moment, or in general in the relationship, that I'm unable to do anything about without your help. So that doesn't mean that you are responsible for me feeling disappointed or frustrated. It doesn't mean that you're responsible for making me feel better now. It does mean that if I can express my feelings, my concern,
Mhm.
my disappointment, whatever that might be, to you in a responsible way, that you're going to be much more inclined to be open to hearing that, not feeling blamed or shamed or uh, guilt tripped, but you're gonna be able to hear that in a way that might invite you to want to participate in this conversation in a way that will be helpful to me and, by extension to you too. So we want to minimize anything that can be heard as accusatory, as judgmental, as critical, as manipulative, as controlling, which means that for a lot of us, we won't have anything to say.
No. So I want to speak about the antidote to the conspiracy of silence. Making an explicit agreement that we are welcoming the truth to come from our partner. You can say, I want you to tell me if there are needs that you have and desires that you have, if I may be falling short, I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me respectfully. I want you to tell me gently, not in a condemning way, but I want to be there for you in the way that you want me to be there. And if I can possibly do it, I will. And the way you bring it to me makes all the difference. If you have this kind of a contract, maybe it'll feel a little uncomfortable when I hear it, but I'd rather know the truth. Of course, I want to feel like I'm a good wife. Of course, you want to feel like you're a good husband. And if I hear that I need to ratchet it up a little bit or tame it down a little bit or shift a little bit, I may, have a little sting, but I'd rather know.
Well, I'm glad that you used that example because it allows me to rewind it just a little bit to the point where you said, if you need this to happen, I notice that when I hear that, or when I hear something like, you need to handle this, or you need to know this, or you should feel this way, or anything that sounds like that, that's like a big trigger for me.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm being told that I'm doing something wrong. I'm being told that I'm bad. I'm being threatened in some way. Now, I know that you don't mean any of that stuff.
No.
I know, but because of what I'm bringing, which is a sensitivity to criticism, and the fear that comes up when I feel judged or criticized, that, oh, now this person is upset with me, or this person is not going to be able to stay in this relationship too much longer because I am making them feel this way. They need me to do this in order to allay their concerns and their feelings and to fulfill their needs. I'm not just saying that, this is necessarily a universal feeling that everybody has, but I think that a lot of us are more sensitive to criticism, and it often activates fear and insecurity when we hear it, which doesn't mean that, we can't ever do that. We're going to do it. We can't help it.
So you're making the distinction here between demands and commands,
right,
and requests
and
invitations.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's how hard we're holding on.
Well, it's also our intention.
Attached.
It's whether we have the belief and the expectation that if I have a need that I associate with this relationship, and it's not being filled,
that
then
you're responsible. Rather than,
Yeah.
I'm taking some responsibility
Yeah.
for letting you know
Yeah.
what will work for me and having a collaboration about that.
That's right.
And I want to give people some examples of what our desires and needs are, to legitimatize them if we're feeling like they're not being properly addressed, to give voice to them in a responsible way.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that we all have a need to feel loved, that we desire to feel.
Let's. I agree, but let me just interrupt for a second. Let's just rewind it a little bit. Let's talk about the definition of a need.
Okay, do that.
As opposed to, okay, let me just make that distinction. So a need is something that is a requirement that has to be fulfilled in order, in terms of a relationship, that has to be fulfilled in order for a person to have a sense of well-being. So we're not just talking about physical needs, like I need to have food and shelter and water and that stuff. We're talking about requirements for emotional well-being, for a sense of feeling okay and fulfilled as a person. And a desire is something that we want.
Mm-hmm.
So a desire is not essential. Most of the desires that we have are not essential for our well-being. Like, I don't require a brand new car in order to be okay as in this life, in this body. I don't require people to always treat me the way I want them to. I certainly want them to treat me in ways that are preferable to others. But a desire is not a need. When we use the word I need, or worse, I need you to do this, understand this, feel this, think this, then we're putting an excessive amount of responsibility on the other person who does not have the capacity to fulfill that desire, even if they want to.
Okay, so this might be an interesting conversation for you, the listening audience, to have with somebody who's dear to you, whether you consider some of the examples that I'm going to give to be needs or desires.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with what I consider to be everybody has a need to feel loved. There's no question in my mind about that.
So for your well-being, that requires you to have that experience.
By more than one person, not just you.
Which doesn't mean that you've got to go to those people and make sure that they understand that so that they can give you that. What does it mean in terms of responsibility?
It means that I need to let the people who are important to me know that they are loved by me, and that I want to show the love that I feel for them in a way that they feel nourished by my love. And those special people to me, I want a reciprocal agreement with them that we're tuned into each other and that we have open enough communication to know the specific ways we want to be loved. And I want to give some more examples.
Good.
And you can look and see whether you consider these just to be desires or whether they're really and truly needs, and have a conversation with the people that are important to you, to feel cared about, to feel heard, recognized, seen, validated, accepted. Some of us feel like in this relationship, I want to be number one. I feel a strong desire, to be the most important person in your life. You're the most important person in my life, and I have a strong desire for that. There are others to feel connected. I know myself well enough to know that I have a need for physical affection, for touch. That's not a desire on my part. That's a basic need that I have to thrive. So these are human, our humanness. And if we are missing out on some of the things that we really want to have to thrive, it may be because we've gotten resigned. Perhaps we've reached out to have some of these needs and desires met and haven't been met with, oh, I'm so glad you told me. That would be easy for me to do. Thank you for being honest. I want you to thrive. We may have met with some resistance. We may have hit them in their shame button or their guilt button or their not enough button or their too much button. And so we've withdrawn from speaking the truth about what it is that we want to thrive. And we're not doing ourselves or the people that we're close to any favor to conceal that. So to watch and see whether we've settled, to watch and see whether we've just been sucking it up, to watch to see if we've become cynical, that, oh, people don't really get what they really want. You know, there's a lot of sacrificing that has to be done in relationship, because that cynicism can do us in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for so many of us, we come into adulthood having learned that that our disappointments and feelings that make other people uncomfortable sometimes are not desired. They have no interest in hearing them. They don't want to hear things that are going to make them feel scared or hurt or disappointed or guilty or angry, or they don't want to hear it. And we have many very effective ways of communicating to people that we don't want to hear negative, quote, negative feedback. We've talked about this in a couple of our previous Facebook Live talks about the power and the necessity for feedback. And I'll use the word need. We all need honest, accurate feedback, which is not about what we are doing wrong or right. It's simply information fed back to us in regard to how our presence, our interactions with them, our communication, how that's affecting them. This is what I experienced when you said this. This is my experience of hearing you right now. This is what's going on with me in response to recognizing what you're doing right now. Mm-hmm. So it's really about giving the other person information about how their behavior, including their verbal behavior, is impacting on them, so that if we choose to, if we so desire, we can make an effort to accommodate that, or we can take that into consideration. And the thing I want to say about that is the appropriate response whenever somebody gives us honest, meaningful, sincere, beneficial to our relationship feedback. The first response can always be, thank you. Mm-hmm. Because I sincerely do appreciate that, even though what you're saying to me doesn't feel good to hear, that I have let you down, or you're reminding me that I did make that promise and I didn't keep it, or whatever it is I'm getting. I, bottom line, do appreciate the risk, and it is always a risk, you're taking in being honest with me right now. When we begin our response to their expression of a grievance, then they're much more inclined, when we begin with that kind of acknowledgement and appreciation, we're already on the right foot, because they're going to be much more open to hearing. They're not going to be as inclined to get defensive and explain and justify. Oh, well, the traffic was really bad, I couldn't help it. Or, something came up, or, well, explaining why. No, people don't want to hear. We don't want to hear why. At least we don't want to hear it until after I trust that you understand and have heard what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. When I feel like you have accepted my feelings of being hurt or disappointed or even angry about something without reacting in a defensive way, then we're both going to be much more inclined to listen to each other.
This is one of those examples of it's pay now or pay later. We can pay early on the feeling, the sting or the discomfort of having something brought to our attention where we may be falling short. But if we don't stay current with those things, man, we pay later with penalties and interest. There are a few other things, and you can consider for yourselves whether you would call these needs or desires. But we want to feel safe, cared for. We want to feel that they trust us and that we trust them, that they count on us and that we can count on them, that we're going to be honest with each other, that we're going to be open with each other, that we're going to listen well to each other, that we're going to keep agreements that we make with each other. We're going to check out our agreements before we make them to see if we are really committed to following through. We desire to feel their commitment, the safety and security of that connection. And all of these things, when we keep these out in the open, not concealed in the dark shadow realms, we have a right to expect that our relationship will thrive. And if we continue with the avoidant pattern and the conspiracy of silence, and I won't bring my complaints to you and you don't bring your complaints to me, we can expect that our relationship will not hit the higher levels of the thrive zone. It's as simple as that.
So if you want to go for the gold, as we like to say, tell the truth and tell it in a respectful and sensitive, considerate way.
Yeah. Ask your partner how they're receiving you when you bring your complaints to them. If there's a way that it may be more refined, because this is one of those skills that gets really better as you practice and you get honest feedback from your partner. And to the best of your ability, make them feel welcome to bring you their truth. Solicit it. Ask from time to time, how are we doing? How are things going? Are you feeling like you're getting your needs and your desires met? If not, is there any way that you can bring them to me right now? I want to hear you because I want to participate with you full heart as your partner. So I think we got it covered now. Is there any closing remarks you want to make?
Yeah, just one.
Yeah?
Goodbye.
Okay.
What about next week?
I'm going to make a closing remark.
Okay.
That I'm thankful for your honesty. I'm thankful that you're no longer crude about where you bring your complaints to me like in the old days. I'm glad for all the refinement that you've done. I've learned and been inspired to also bring my complaints to you in a more refined way and to other people. So I'm definitely in the thrive zone.
Glad to hear it.
I want to tell you about next week. We're speaking about marriage and happiness. And
You mean there's a relationship?
There's a real strong relationship there, significant relationship there. And we're going to bring some of the research from the positive psychology movement. If
you're married, then you're going to be happier or you're going to be more unhappy?
No, you're going to be happier.
Oh, just from being married.
From the committed partnership, man, that gives you a big boost in your happiness quotient.
I think there may be people out there who are not
sure
about that.
Tune in.
Should be an interesting
We'll explore it. You don't have to agree with everything we say, but we're going to bring you some provocative material.
We don't agree with everything we say.
You can't agree with everything. All right. See you next week.
Bye.